All right, guys, I'm leaving. I'm going to the Marquette Alouettes. I'm going to coach the semi-pro hockey team up there. And, huh? The Alouettes. Hey, it's been a tough day and a half. I mean, I felt like after watching the film on everything we did, I gave a lot of credit to UConn, but we did not play very good basketball second half of that game. The turnover things were pretty ridiculous. I really felt it was maybe some mental fatigue. There would be no other reason that 4 or 5 of those turnovers could happen. And I didn't think we did a very good job getting the ball inside, but I did feel AP did a pretty good job posting. They swarmed and beat them up and pushed them off, and we didn't handle that real well. I thought there were some times in that game when we weren't as disciplined as we needed to be. And all those things came to a point where we're still 2 down. We get the ball inside, and they knock it out of our hands, and then the big 3-point foul that ended our chances. And looking back, we won 29 games. Matt put together a couple things that I was amazed at myself, but those seniors were a part of, the 4 NCAA championship with 3 Sweet 16s, Elite 8, Big Ten championship, 2 Big Ten tournament championships. There were a lot more positives than negatives. The ironic thing about this year's team is we finished with the best defensive field goal percentage in the Big Ten at 39.7, which is amazing with what we lost. But I think the best part for me is we were second in the league in both field goal percentage offense and 3-point field goal percentage offense, which a hair behind Michigan in both, taking almost 10 less threes than they took. And I say that because it just dilutes the perception of maybe who we are and what we are. We set a single school record for 3-pointers, making 307. Single season record for assists. Established a school single season record for block shots. And I say all those things not to make me feel better about losing, but we accomplished a lot of things in a lot of areas. We weren't a one-dimensional team. And then I look at my seniors, and Keith Appling is going to end here. 18th best scorer in the history of the school at 1,500 and some points. 4th in career games played at 142. Tied for 3rd in career starts at 123. But top 10 in career free throws made, attempted, steals, assists, and 3-point field goals attempted. I mean, for a guy that's gone through so much and been kind of the scapegoat, he had a hell of a career. Adrian Payne finished one of 9 players with, over 1,200 points and 700 career rebounds. And when you think about when I got the job, going to 4 straight NCAA tournaments would have been an act of Congress. And when you think about what these guys have accomplished with the Sweet 16s and the Elite 8, and not getting to our ultimate goal was disappointing, but there was still a lot to feel good about. And maybe the game ended in the most bizarre way of all. We finished this season at 11.6 turnovers a game. We talked last year, it was the biggest nemesis we had. I said, we'll vow to correct it. It was the best in the history of the school since the stat's been taken in 1985. And what is the significance? I think our 4 losses at the end, we had 16 turnovers in each game, including the last one. The one at Ohio State, the one I think at Nebraska and Illinois. So turnovers doomed us at the end, and that was disappointing. But as I go through, if you look at the improvement we made when we had everybody back, those last 7 games in the tournament, both tournaments, we shot almost 48-5. We shot 38 from the 3. We shot 76 from the free throw line. We still turned it over the same. We were plus 7 or 8 from the rebound margin. The stats are amazing because our opponent shot 37-5 from the field, which is phenomenal, 32 from the three. And, we scored 70-some points and gave up in the low 60s. So I feel bad that this team had to play with so many injuries because I don't think we ever reconnected to where we were, could have been. And there'll be other teams that have gone through one or two. But it was hard on these guys, and it was hard on me. And it was probably hard on you. But I think there were so many more things accomplished that just kind of shows that the program is in good shape, even though the team, we had some ups and downs. And I'm looking forward to retooling and figuring out what's next for us. As far as our players, we'll lose Keith. And I think Travis has come on to, he's got some things that he's got to work on. Number one is getting stronger and staying healthy all year. We lose AP, and we're losing a kid who had an incredible senior year, did a lot for us, but you always lose seniors. In Gary Harris's case, I have my own thoughts on what I think will happen. I think Gary is as I met with him, I met with all the players yesterday. I asked him the same thing as I could do for everyone else. Talking to his dad today about checking into where his status is. From what I gather, though, his status is still very, very high. And when it's that high, my advice over the years has been, if you're ready mentally, you should go. I think he's torn because his relationship with the team, but with Zell in particular. Here's a kid who's is a good student, likes college. All the strange reasons that guys leave is everybody hates school and everybody, needs the money or this and that. He doesn't have those factors in his life. In fact, he has just about the opposite. He has two parents that are, mother who played pro ball, understands the goods and the bads to it. But Gary will probably make a decision in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try to talk to a lot of people at the Final Four from an agent standpoint, and then I'll talk to my friends in the league from a GM standpoint. And I'm telling his dad to do the same thing. But I'm also looking at what I've been looking at all year long with him as far as talking to different people that come to games and that. And my leaning thought would be that, he could surprise me like AP did, but I think he's going to be a very solid pick. And if all those stats come out, then I'd be leaning to advising him it's time to make the jump. But that'll be determined in the next 2 weeks by all the research that I do, his dad does, and mom, and what NBA teams tell us. So I don't know if I want to talk about the players coming back now or opening up some questions. So I think I'll just open up some questions.
Tom, you used the word retooling instead of the word rebuilding. Is that a sign that this program is at the point where you're losing a lot of guys, senior-wise, and you may lose Harris and some others potentially, but it's a program that can't afford to use the word rebuild?
Yeah, I don't ever want to use the word rebuild because I don't think we are rebuilding. I just think we're, I did another thing. I had Matt do some checking around the country, and as I always do, and look at who made big jumps. We got somebody in our state. Levert goes from 2 points to 13 points. But I took the top 20 teams, and it's amazing some of the jumps, the guys from Florida have made. And you think there was a guy that, as I said earlier, was off their team half the summer and had some standards he had to live up to and or doesn't come back. And looked like he was going to transfer, and now he's leading them to a Final Four. What I think we do a lot is we look at who we lose, but every year we lose somebody, that means a different role for somebody else. Retooling means, a guy like Zell has to be retooled now to be a different role. A guy like Matt Costello, who was playing very good early, lost some confidence, as did a Keith Appling, maybe because of his illness, maybe because of the way we played him. But I felt pretty good at how he was playing early, and I guess that's why I used the word. And I do agree. I don't think when you've gone 17 straight years you're rebuilding anything, because we've lost more than this by far. When you look back to 2001, we lost 7 guys, and we came back, and last weekend we were still playing for a Big Ten tournament. We had Neitzel and the no-names. We were the Miami Dolphins of college basketball. Travis Walton pops up. Raymar comes in and does things better than you think. And we got back there then. I mean, very few times have we been out of the hunt for a Big Ten championship in the last 2 weeks, and I'm expecting that to live true with this group. I really am. Yeah, with Brandon, I will do the same thing, just because, he was playing at one level, and then, sometimes it's, what did you do for me today? And, didn't finish quite as strong as, I'd hoped if he kept that going. But I think he's just starting to get there. Like AP last year, to be honest with you. Only AP, because of his size, has a little different situation. But I will do some checking on Brandon. I talked to him about it yesterday, and it's exactly what he wants me to do. But I'd be leaning the other way with him, at least right now.
Tom, with Gary, you said, you're going to do research with the NBA, with agents, and you said you'd be advising him to make the jump if you hear what? If your research tells you he's a lottery pick at that point?
You know what? I don't go by that. I mean, where he is as a guard, because it's hard to go as a lottery pick, because maybe they'll take, like they always do, a bunch of big guys. It seems like big guys get more. But if
What would you hear that would lead you to tell him you should make the jump?
if he's one of the top guards still, that would be one thing. If he's up there, I don't know if a lottery pick, but yeah, I guess pretty close to it, at least if that's what the projections are. As I told you last week, Manziel, in my mind, has gone from the first player taken to a third-round pick in some people's minds. So it's hard to get that information. But I do think I have enough friends in the league that will give me an honest assessment, as honest as it can be. And yet there's always some depends on who else comes out. But I think Gary stayed pretty solid through things. And I think the one thing about him is he's going to get better every year, no matter where he is, because he's so self-motivated. But it is going to be hard for him, because he is one of the rare birds that I think, they used to tell me, at least Judd told me, that Magic loved college. I don't know if anybody loves college. I mean, I didn't love it. I'd love to go back to it, but I didn't love it when I was there. But he does have an appreciation for it, and he's perfectly fine in school because of the student he is, and he's perfectly fine at home because of his family situation. So he doesn't have the same reason as some to go, but you also have to do what you have to do when you're at a spot where you are. And so, we'll look at both things.
Does the info gathering here involve also the official advisory committee?
Not as much anymore. I mean, maybe because I have more friends in the league, one, but that advisory committee is almost, to me, it's been okay, but the parameters are so big. He could be the 17th through 38th pick. Well, so could I. I mean, it's if the margins were smaller, but that hasn't happened the last couple of years. It's been a little bigger than that. Like with APs, it was 18 to 35, well, that's such a big difference. And I understand that's maybe the way that's the way they have to do it. But at the same time, a player that has to make big decisions, I think he's going to want a little more, and I don't know if there's any sure things, but a little more solid things than just a committee that's polling a bunch of them. I'd rather be calling 18 or 19 than 6 or 7 of them calling the others.
Expecting anybody else leaving that you didn't expect, or
I don't think so. I mean, there's always the thing with Russell and Alex, who are seniors. They will graduate. They could opt to either not play, especially in Russ's case, who's had so many injuries, or play at a different level. But, I did meet with them on that. I met with every player yesterday, and none disgruntled. Some that have to make some decisions on how important basketball is. Some that we have to make our decisions and they have to make theirs. Nobody will be run off. Nobody will be gotten rid of. But there could be a guy like that. I think Russ got some big decisions to make because I think he's kind of gone through. Basketball was the most important thing in Russell Bird's life, and the injuries kind of took that to hell. In the last year, basketball is very important to him still, and it's just that now are you physically able to play at the same level? And he's looking at that because I think he still wants to play, and I'd be the first to help him if that's what he made his decision on, or if we jointly made a decision on that. But there's nothing that's going to be determined in the next week or so anyway. After that, a couple of weeks, I think, get a chance to sit down and really think about where you are and what you want to do. It's hard to make tough decisions after such a disappointing loss for them or me.
Alan, you kind of go to bed with the satisfaction that this team gave you everything you had, or will you take to your grave that because of the circumstances, this team was maybe robbed of a shot at the bigger dream?
Oh, definitely the second. I do think they gave me everything they have, but I do think they were robbed. I said I would talk to you after the season. It was the most grueling season ever, by far, and all in a positive way. No, as I said, less problems than ever as far as problems that you always have in college athletics, but more injuries than 3-4 years combined, and it is just, it's so interesting to see how people, not you guys, but people think these injuries just don't have a factor or that they're common. Wisconsin's going into that game not having won all year, and Kentucky's going to go into that game and they're making a big deal of Cully Stein. He's their least scorer on that team, but that's the first real injury they've had. And Florida, as I talked to Billy yesterday, he had one guy with a sprained ankle the first week and one guy they suspended for 2 games, and they've had nothing since. And I'm not sure, but looking at the stats, I don't think UConn missed a guy all year. Not positive on them, but you do got to be lucky with that. And, you look at that last game and we're still trying to get Keith back, and it was brutal on them, guys. It was brutal on them. And there's no way they're in the same shape they would have been in. Payne and Dawson and Appling and, Costello, I don't think recovered from his the same way. Sprained ankles are 1-week issues. When you get into 3 weeks to 5 weeks, you're talking serious things in basketball. When it's in the middle of the Big Ten season, it was difficult. I told you, I think at the Final Four, I hated these press conferences. I didn't dislike them. I hated them. not as much as Twitter, but right there, right behind it. Because I always felt like I was making excuses, lying to you, this, that, and the other thing. And, you know, it wasn't from you, but if I could tell you the people, you know, as I said, whether it be Dawson's injury, I know something else happened. I know this and that. And I was as honest and upfront as I could possibly be with 98% of what went on. And I felt like there were so many things that every time I met with you, there was something else. And so I didn't hate it because of you. I hate it because of the message I was bringing. And that was difficult for me. And then when I was posted up by outside people, not you, about some of those things, I guess that would frustrate me a lot. But I'm through it. I do think we were robbed of that. I do. I think this team was good enough to get there. And under normal circumstances, we became a favorite at the end because everybody got caught up in that Big Ten tournament, and deservingly so. And we were a very good team at the end. And, you know, I look back on what Mike Krzyzewski had said after they played us in Tampa. You know, they thought our game took a lot out of them for a Connecticut game that they were favored to win easy. I think the Virginia game took something out of us a little bit. We looked tired, that you know, mentally or physically, and maybe it was a combination of the whole season. So the first part is true, Fred. They gave me everything they had, and sometimes, you know, so did every assistant coach, so did my trainer and my doctors. But there were some incredible obstacles in front of this year's team.
Did you struggle with perspective of, you just talked about all the things you've accomplished this senior class, Sweet 16, the Final Eight, the 17th straight, and then the idea that you had a rare group, even among, is that for you even in terms of?
Yeah, because I know, I told you guys this at the beginning of the year, I said I've had, in my mind, 3 teams that were capable of getting to a Final Four in my, no, not capable, because I think every team's capable. Expecting in my standards, when I'm laying in bed at night with nobody around me, I really believe this team was one of 3 that could get there. And 2 of them did, and this one came an eyelash from it. And so that means 3 that I knew of in 19 years. I mean, that does not, you know, so yeah, it's frustrating and disappointing. But then again, I had 3 other ones that I didn't put there. And those were just as much as fun to get there with them. So I think we'll still have some fun trying to do it a different way.
Tom, in hockey, coaches usually don't really reveal the full extent of the injuries until the playoffs are done. Now that's done, really how bad was Keith's wrist? Is this something that might require some type of surgery before he's able to go to the NBA Combine?
You know what? No, Drew, it won't, from everything I've been told. Because there's 2 kinds of injuries. There's a physical injury, and then there's a mental injury. And Keith's injury from North Carolina on was a problem. But then as he fought through that, and then I think survived it. When he injured it again against Indiana, I think the mental part of not practicing and not coming in here. Keith was living in here. I'd come to press conference. What's the difference in Keith happening? Well, this spring, he started watching film, and he dedicated his summer to getting better as a passer, working on his shot. He didn't shoot at all in January. He didn't come in here at all. It was bothering. I mean, it was nothing, as I said, structurally serious, but it was bad. He couldn't put any weight on it. He couldn't lift up a fork. And then it got better. And do I think it's 99% better, or at least 90% better the last 3 weeks? Yes, I do. I think then the mental part of it came in. And the poor kid just wasn't as comfortable with it. I mean, if you look at those stats, they're mind-boggling. If you look at the first 20 games in the last 15, I mean, they're just in shots taken is like 6, 7 different. And then if you're not as confident, you know you're not going to shoot it, then it's easier for a defense to guard you a certain way. And one of his biggest assets was getting into the paint and distributing. So why did I play him so much at the end? He was still a phenomenal defender. He really was. And I still think did a hell of a job of that. He could still push the ball as well as anybody. And I guess some of it was you get in the human element of things with kids. And he had worked so hard to improve it. And then it just was taken away. And, I wanted to make sure I gave him every chance. Did I still think he was the best guy in this last game? Travis, when he was at the point, they just attacked him. And so I still went with what I thought was best. But did I feel for Keith? I told every player yesterday, so since I do share it, I'll share it with you. I got one of the most unbelievable texts I ever got from that kid yesterday. It was tear-jerking. And it was just talking about, even though he didn't verbalize it, how much it meant to get to a Final Four and to not be the class that didn't get there. Things that Keith Appling never talked to me about. And almost using that vaunted phrase that I hate, I wish. And it just makes me realize that each year it's hard to convince people that your time's running out. And it's hard to convince all of us that there's certain things in life you do not get a second chance at. And I read that. I will keep that text for as long as I coach or as long as I'm a parent, because it was very well written and very well said, the things he said in there. And it makes me feel that even though Keith had a tough year, he's going to leave here better than he came. And that's kind of the ultimate goal. And what do you feel?
I didn't want to ask you during the year, Tom, but now that it's over, would you like to see, even if it's just one, the lead official on every crew made available to face the media after each game?
I would. That was a Judd Heathcote thing 20 years ago.
I mean, the kids are young, they're kids and they've got to face this, and you do.
Yeah, listen, I'm not blaming anything on officials, but if freedom of movement is the main course of what we tried to address this year, freedom of movement, is that just on the perimeter? What's funny is this is the one year, 90% of you know this has been a pretty guard-oriented program over the years, and this is the one year we've had some pretty good. It was, you watch the game, it was, I got a hell of a picture in there in my office from a New York paper with AP in a headlock, and no foul called. And that's the only complaint I had about that. They deserved to win. They played better than us. But I thought when people say, why did you only have 8 shots in the paint? It was Antonio Smith was sitting there watching. He became a UConn fan. He was proud of how it was, and that's the way it was. But I do think anybody that's put in a position that can change people's lives should have to be held accountable. And accountable is, I would like to see something like that, let everybody go through the same thing we go through. I'm sorry, Drew, there was a second part of that question.
With Keith's text, was he saying to you that, I wish I would have known a couple years earlier that it's going to end at some point, I need to I should have worked a little bit harder?
It didn't use those exact words, but yes, that's what, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I feel that way sometimes, I wish I'd have done a little more. But in this profession, or when you're dealing with guys, that great years can change their lives. We all would agree, I think, just nod your heads. Keith Appling having a banner year, a banner year. I mean, one that would have led to something, awards-wise, future-wise, whatever. And, you know, when it gets taken away that fast, I try to tell them, you know, it's still not the end of the world. I mean, Fran McCaffrey's going through something that could be tougher than that. Lacey's going through something that could be tougher than that. But until you go through something, you never know what it's like. And when I met with them yesterday, I used the illustration of, remember when you were a kid and you put your hand on the burner? Your mom tells you don't put your hand on there. Your mom, don't put your hand close to there, you know. And finally, you do it, and you burn your hand. And I said, we got to get to the point where we don't need to experience that. We got to start trusting in what people say to you, because sometimes once it's burnt, it's too late. And I really, I think that the hardest part of my job, if I look at this last 10 years and how it's changed, is there's less and less people that trust what you say. And as Judd, I mean, Judd is so smart, because all the things he said, I mean, they're all so true, you know, and that is one thing that he always says: whatever changes in society will change within your program, will change within your family. And I agree with that so much. We're a softer society, softer players. We are a less trustworthy society. You know, it takes more for players. We know the problems: split homes, this and that, male figures. We know the issues, but it doesn't solve. What makes it hard is you say, why doesn't he see this or trust you on this? Why would he? You know, just because I was blessed in one way, why would he? Would I? Would I trust some of you? Would I trust some other people that I don't know? You know, it's not that kind of society now. So it wasn't like I totally wish. It was just like, man, I see what you're saying. And I got to do a better job. I got to do a better job. It's going to be my summer resolution, that I'm going to do a better job of making sure they understand that, because they did what only 8 other teams did. You know, I mean, they're still standing there in the Elite 8. But somebody's going to do it with with only one team that did it. And whether it's called being anal, whether it's called being crazy, doesn't matter what it's being called. Magic and Mateen spoke to our team the night before the game, and it was really interesting. They were both in the room, and Irvin, you know, spoke, and he says, Mateen, you speak to him. And in different ways, they said the same thing. And I said to him after, I said, doesn't change, does it? He said, nope, not 35 years later, it doesn't change. I said, doesn't change in sports or business, does it? Nope. He said, I walk into a meeting now, I'm telling them, why isn't this meeting started? Why is somebody late? Why is this and that? Same thing. You know what? He said, I don't want to be around average people. And that's what drives me every day, and probably drives players nuts. I don't want to. They're not average when you get to an Elite 8, but they ain't elite until you win it all. And so that's the mission, that's the goal. And it is so cool to sit there with some of your former players, or some people that have been so successful. You know, like I watched Steve Smith, and when Magic can do the same thing in business that he did in sports, you realize it's not about what you're in. It's about how you do it to be the best of what you're in. And so thank God my players gave me that ride to the Elite 8, because then again, I got to see some of our former guys do a better job of something than I can do, and that was valuable to me.
Does a graduate transfer do anything for you this year, or is that not?
You know what? I'm the only guy in this state that's not panicking over what we have and what we got. You know, are there graduate guys? Maybe. Never really wanted to build my program on it, but it's getting to be the norm. I think Billy's a good case of that. If it worked out for the right guy and it was in the right situation, but there are going to be some guys, you're going to see Valentine step up big time, I really believe. He's been the hardest worker I have, and he will. And I think you're going to see some other guys. I think Dawson's going to get to another level. If those two guys do, then you can take everybody else, take smaller steps. They don't have to take big steps. It'll be a different kind of team. It won't be as star-studded when you look at them. But, star-studded, Wisconsin's never been star-studded. I listened to his press conference last night. It was amazing. He was apologizing for taking Gasser and taking this. Did you see that? It was amazing. And the one guy that he had that was the highest recruited guy scored 6 points in the last game and did nothing. Yeah, Kaminsky averaged 4 points last year. I'm not worried about it. I've been here when Neitzel and Walton were my two big cogs, and we got to an NCAA tournament and, came within a game or two of winning the Big Ten. I've been here when we lost 7 guys, 7 players in 2001. Listen to the people complain, but don't lose sleep over how we'll be next year, because people are probably right. I'm probably better being an underdog, and I will value this spring, summer, and fall like few I've valued here.
On that said, there is potentially another recruit that you could add to this class. I mean, it can't be specific, but.
Right. If we can if we can either get a decent power forward big guy, somebody for the future, we will. If it happens to be a fifth-year guy that could add in some area, we will. We've got one more scholarship. We plan on using it, and we are recruiting some guys that we think would fit in. If we get one of them, I think this will be a very good recruiting class. It'll be just different because guys coming from different schools, you don't hear the same. I think Bo said he had one guy that was ranked in the recruiting world on his list, and they're playing in the Final Four. Calhoun, I talked to him, and they had a lot of great players there, but they had more players that were nobodies coming in. And this day and age, as I tell my players all the time, find players that want to become players is more important than finding players that are players, because there's so many guys that if they are players, they're not hungry enough to move on, and if they aren't players, you can say they're not good enough to move on. But I think finding that happy medium is what's worked pretty well. In fact, we're very few Kentuckys, very, very, very few Kentuckys, and most of them that are getting it done. If you look at the McDonald's All-Americans on the 3 teams that moved on in the Big Ten, there weren't many. There weren't many. Kentucky would have more on their backup list, their scout team, than the 3 teams had combined probably. And so don't let that confuse you.
Do you think the Big Ten will be strong next year as well as this year?
Some of that depends on who leaves. I don't know who all's leaving and who's coming back. That's always interesting. So that'll play some part in it. But I think what the Big Ten is starting to do now is we've established ourselves as a basketball conference also, and a very good one. And I think the addition, I don't know what Rutgers will bring, but Maryland, I know a little bit more about. That's going to be a pretty good addition, and I still think you're going to see the Penn States and Nebraska's getting better and better, and there's going to be a lot of good teams next year. So unless we have a mass exodus of players, I think the Big Ten will be right up there 1-2 again. I really do.
How much does all this talk in the NBA
change what you guys do in terms of recruiting? I mean, does it
Yeah.
alter that at all?
Boy, that's a good question. You know, I haven't let it. Maybe one of Captain Dukey's off-season deals here will be to take a look at, along with maybe some of my GAs, what has happened in a 5-year period, you know? What has happened with, I mean, we know Kentucky's going to go to 3 out of 4, and that's good, even though the one they didn't even barely made the NIT, but are we having more success going that way? You know, I'm on a committee with Krzyzewski. It's going to be interesting to talk to him on Thursday about what he felt of the year. You know, you look at, they've gotten some pretty good players, and 2 out of 3 times they've been out in the first round. That's you know, poor guy doesn't have any windows left in his house. You know, it's all blacked out in there. When Duke does that, that's not normal, you know. And what are the reasons for it, you know? Where's Kansas? How do they look at it? So I'll do a little research on that. Not that I'll ever have that same problem. We're never going to have 6 of them and things like some do. But why is the mid-majors moving up in that? Is it because of that? I think there'll be some studies looked at. But there's always pressure on coaches to get the best players you can get because it's such a media frenzy. It's such a fan frenzy. You know, I always used to kid Frieder that, you know, it's better to have the #1 recruiting class than it is to win a national championship. And sometimes that's true as far as the way people look at your program. I don't feel that way. So I don't know. The NBA, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. It's kind of funny. I mean, how does one guy come in who worked for the other guy for all those years and have a completely different, the way it sounds, and we may be meeting with him down there. So it sounds like either the NBA is not happy with the problems they're having, or something's got to be up, because they're reconsidering a lot. And I'm even hearing some 3-year now. I'm even back hearing some baseball rule things, which for me, I still think would benefit the 3 parties. Now, nobody cares about the 3 parties. The NCAA says they care about the student athlete. The NBA, we know, cares about the money and what they do, and they should. It's a business. College coaches are always blamed that we care about our own butt, and that's it. But if we really, truly cared about the kid, at least that's what the colleges can look at. You know, there's no question in my mind, in the big picture, not in the LeBron's case or Kobe's case, they're still better off having a rule that keeps less pressure on them, lets them develop like a normal human being. You'll get the argument we're taking away their chance to make money. I still wish one of you guys, you're all so good at what you do, would do a research study on how many are out in the cold that came out early, that left early, compared to how many that make it big. We know that some of them make them big. But when I hear people talk about it's not fair that we're taking away an opportunity for a kid to make money, then the baseball rule seems good. If it's really not fair and that guy's that good, go. But does anybody say it's not fair the way we treat them like a piece of meat and cast them aside and let people tell them they're NBA first-round picks and they're not picks at all? And I've had 1 or 2. Is that fair? And which ones are more of? I think there's a lot more of those than the LeBrons and Kobes. And then does anybody research what happens to these kids that don't have an education, that haven't gotten a chance to mature like all of us? Not you, Fred, but I mean most of us that have matured over time. What happens when we make all that money? Are we lost at the end anyway? And I struggle with that. I can't wait till I'm out of coaching, because then I could talk on it without any vested interest, and you're going to hear me talk the same way, because I really don't care. If a guy's good enough to come out, if Gary Harris can come out, make money, be solid, God, I'm going to be his biggest fan. I love Jason Richardson. I'm his biggest fan. When he flew into New York this year, God, it was awesome. You know, I love that. And if he can make it earlier, I love it. Helps my program, helps him. But who's doing the research on the number of people who fail? And that's what we've done. We've just used them as a piece of meat. You know, that doesn't go over big in recruiting because everybody wants to use that against you. I'm not against them coming out early. I'm against them failing. I'm against them not having a fair shot. You know, if I would have got this job at 24, what do you think my chances of success would have been? Slim to none. Slim to none. You know, and I do want to state this, since I let the president down, and God, that bums me out. But since I did, tell me why you got to be 36 to be president. Why? Well, do the labor laws go against that? Why shouldn't we be 30? Why shouldn't we be 20 and be president? And then we just pick some athletes from places that these kids maybe haven't had that kind of life. And so we say it's not fair to hold them back, and then we forget that 5 of them make it and 50 of them don't. And we just, probably those 50, a lot of them could have had better lives, not only with an education, but they'd still be pros. If you're good enough to be a pro, you stay in school, you're going to get better. Now, LeBron's case, my son sprouts up this summer and goes 6'9", 260, gains, 200 pounds. God, I'll be escorting him right to the league. I got no problem with that at all.
Would the NBA be okay, though, if you did a baseball rule, wouldn't they still be worried, oh, now a bunch of kids are not going to come out who think they're LeBron who aren't? I guess I wonder if you think it's feasible if they could ever go to a...
Would that hurt the NBA?
Well,
Wouldn't hurt them. They're doing that anyway.
No, but what I'm saying is, because obviously they're trying to go to 2, or some are, because they want to wait and see. If you did the baseball rule, some guys would go right away, okay, LeBron, but then maybe some kids who aren't LeBron, and so they, what I mean? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, you'd get a few, but you wouldn't get an onslaught like you're getting now. I mean, I think a couple years we've had 70, 75 kids come out early. It's only 60 draft picks, and most of those kids think they're going in the first round, so somebody's getting screwed. And that doesn't even include the people in Europe or the seniors or anybody else. I mean, I'll lose this argument because we're going to say we're depriving kids of earning money. And then you sound like you're the big rich guy depriving. I'm not. If he can make money, I'm happy.
Would the flexibility be on NCAA's end, though? You leave, you don't get drafted, you can sit out a semester, come back in December, come back to your program.
It's like paying players. All those things sound good in theory. The reality of it, I don't see how it's possible. I don't see how it's possible to pay 700 athletes like they want and then still maintain, a program. I mean, if they can do it, God bless them. I'm all for that too. But, so every year you're going to have players coming out, and the way it is, 4 players will want to come out, and then you're losing 3 to graduation. I mean, you better recruit some guys just to have a team. And if you don't, you're not going to have a team. I don't know how feasible that is. I've always said, this is my theory. Want the Tom Izzo theory? I'm going to give you the Tom Izzo theory. Football has worked pretty good. It's worked pretty good. I mean, there's a little more maturity to it. There's a little more understanding. The NFL and college work very well together. I blame us. I don't blame David Stern. I blame us. I've been on boards. I've been on committees. I do not think there's ever been a college and pro combine where we sit and talk. I mean, the NFL to me does, you know, and it'll tick off all my basketball guys like I do with everything with football, but they just do a better job. They've stuck together better. There's a lot of good college assistants that end up pro assistants. It's almost like growing like you do as a player. We don't do that in basketball. Don't ask me why we don't, but I think we're part of the problem. So I don't blame the NBA. You know, maybe we didn't reach out enough. It's almost like whether it be presidents, commissioners, coaches, or they're stealing our players. No, they're not stealing our players. They're giving our players a hell of an opportunity. If we'd work together, we'd probably come up with something. You can't tell me the NBA is totally benefiting from 18-year-old millionaires, that they're recruiting on a potential rather than on a performance. I mean, there's a lot of mistakes being made. I mean, I don't see a lot of great teams in the league. Does anybody else? I see 3 or 4 or 5. I see a lot of bad teams. Something's not working. And so,
Not to mention empty arenas.
not to mention that either. But thanks to television and that, they're still making money. But I don't know, you know, anytime I get into this conversation, my assistants, you know, die because everybody makes it. Somebody paint me like this. He cares about the kid more than he does about college or pro. Somebody paint that picture. But he cares about all of them, not the 3 or 4, not the 5 or 6. You know, does it benefit? Where would I be if I didn't go through the process? I sure as hell wouldn't be privileged to be standing in front of you guys as a head coach at Michigan State University. And what is it doing to the guys once they're done? And I don't know. I don't see nearly the picture that is being painted by. I've even seen something I've never seen before in the last couple of years. I've seen agents, and they take a lot of abuse like coaches. I've seen agents telling people to go back to school. See how you looked? I swear to you, I've seen it. I can swear to you, I went years, never seen it once. You know what? If we really care about the 18 to 22-year-old, I think we'd start working together a little bit more. I don't know what the answer is. Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? Is it no years? Is it no years? I mean, I'm for that if it benefits them. I'm for that if it benefits them. I'm going to get players here. I'm going to win games, and I've done it a lot of different ways. I'm not worried about me. So don't worry about me. And if you think I told Adrian Payne to come back for any other reason than the one I told him that he should, post me up on it. Ask me. I was blunt about it to him. I was blunt about the reasons why. I thought he was a good enough player. I think there's another animal here that we haven't talked about, that D-League, and how many kids are getting sent down, and is that an environment, you know? I don't know. Not what I'm hearing. So it's not just about getting drafted. Tough. Judd Heathcote, make a lot of money, got a lot of problems. Make more money, got more problems. You know what? That doesn't just go for coaches or media guys. It goes for players too. And as I tell them all, it's a business now, and you'll be, you know, it's tough. But saying that, it's a pretty good business. And for a lot of them, for I think Adrian Payne, it's going to be a great business. For I think if Gary Harris decides to go, I think it's going to be a great thing, because I think he's mature and he understands what he's doing, and his family's solid, and I think all the right reasons. I am, you know, and it'll pay off for Adrian, because you know what somebody's going to say if he gets picked 17th, well, maybe he could have been in the top 10 last year. Yeah, maybe he could have been 35th. I don't care where he goes, it's going to pay off for Adrian, because he's way better ready to handle what he's going to have to handle. I got a great text from Derek Nix early in the year, and it said, Coach, continue to tell the players the real world sucks. That was it. That was it. That was the whole thing, you know. Man, I had a smile from like here to here, you know, because it's the phrase I use every day, you know. You guys think this is tough. Wait till you get to the real world. And for Derek Nix to do that, it was priceless. And it was so sincere. And it was so real. That was great. So I'm looking forward.
Nick said recently, for football, which you said doesn't apply to basketball, but it would apply, you know, give underclassmen a chance to be evaluated so they can get an objective, blunt, and honest opinion of where they stack up. Doesn't that just make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. You know, I'd be in favor of a combine earlier or something like that. I would be in favor of that. But then you take the Menzel, Bridgewater, you know, I mean, I can't believe the way that's all over the map after 4 years or 3 years of watching a guy, and how it's all over the map because one threw off his right foot better than he threw off his left. And I mean, I understand all those things, but can anybody, you guys are all media guys, so when you walk up to a player, and if Joe, if you're 6'1" or whatever you are, and you stand there and you're looking eye to eye with Keith Appling, can you tell that he's 6'1"? Do you ever see so much discrepancy? Like, oh my God, Johnny Manziel's not, well, did he change? Did he shrink? You know, did he change? I mean, is it that hard to figure out, or look at a guy and, you know, figure out an inch? You know, if he goes from 6'5" to 5'11", I mean, is that a surprise to a scout? You know, I don't get that. You know, I don't get that. I mean, you can look at somebody and tell what he weighs, you know, for the most part. I don't get some of those things. And that's what makes it hard is, how are those evaluations going? And what do you have at the time? You know, Gary Harris might be the top 5 pick, but nobody in the top 10 needs a guard. You ain't taking a guard then. Now, if he's 7 foot, you're taking him even if you don't need one. You know, so there's different factors that make it hard. And that's why I feel for the players. But I think for the most part, if everybody could be honest with everybody, there's a pretty good feel where people are slotted. The interviews, I do think, are important, because you find out some guy is, you know, maybe not somebody you'd want on your team. So, maybe there's a way they could do some of that. I would be in favor of that. Plus, it would help us. If the guy said, you know, I don't think you're worthy of going, why not? And maybe he could work on those reasons. We could help him grow in those areas.
You say that it should be more honest and blunt, but doesn't that
It's illegal.
it go against, but it goes against what you were saying before, that people just aren't as trusting as they
Yeah.
were, so they're not going to believe. And that's basically the problem right now, that these guys are going to listen to a couple people who are telling them.
Well, I get so many people that give me this line all the time, you know, like kids go back to big cities and somebody's telling them they should be averaging 30 points a game, they should be taking these shots, and they should be doing this. And you know, and I said to Denzel the other day, when Irvin got done speaking to our team, Denzel came by me, he said, Coach, you think I could go talk to him? You know, I said, yeah, he breathes and he stands and he talks. He's not a Martian. Yeah, just go over and say, I want to talk to you for a while, you know. And Denzel, like a little kid in a candy store, he walked over to him, and they were on the other side of the room. And 20 minutes later, Irvin's still talking to him. So I had Denzel in the morning. I met with all my players yesterday and today, and I said, Zell, what did he say? And he says, well, about the same thing my dad said and you say. He just said it in a little different way. And I said, isn't that funny? I said, how that works. He goes, Coach, it's unbelievable. I said, you know, the difference is in the Cleaves era, and even up to the Walton era, when they heard something like that, they would tell the rest of the team that, and everybody would. And I'm jokingly saying the Twitter era, I really am. But I think that has hurt too, because there's so many voices, they're seeing so many things. What do you believe? I mean, hell, if my assistants come in and said, I just saw this on Twitter, yeah, right, and then the next one comes with this and with that, pretty soon I'm confused. And they might be talking about me. I don't even, they confuse me on me, you know, and I think that's what makes it harder. I really do. There's too many people in these years, and that's why when you do get fortunate to have a Gary Harris, put it this way, guys, whatever Gary Harris does, it'll be done the right way. It'll be done the right way, with his family sitting down with him, with coaches probably being involved, with thought going into it. It'll be done the right way. What we forget is not everybody has that ability and those people around them. But if I had to tell you how many times an NBA scout or GM would say to me, why would the kid listen to some idiot in Tallahassee when you've been doing this for, why would I listen to somebody in school instead of my parents? You know, that's just the American way. You grow on that. But sooner or later, I think the smart ones come back and figure it out. And that's what we got to hope for. All right, some good topics. Come on, give me some more. I'm yours for however long you want me.
What was Magic and the team's main message that was the same? You kind of hinted at it, but.
You know, it was to remember you're on a team and you need everybody on the same page. I think that was the big part of it, and that I thought one of the things he talked about was, you know, every game you move up. You know, like, why didn't Brandon play as well? Was it just the way it happened and didn't score as well? But you know what? Because the competition now, when you have success, you know, he says the more success you have, the more the competition's coming at you. And probably at this time of year, there's better players going against you because you're getting to the best of the best. And so just continue to stay together, play hard, play smart, play good. It's the one thing that when I leave here, I am so fortunate that I've had so many guys from those past groups. I mean, I'm not sure what other teams have, but I know nobody's got it better than I got it. And that is, I mean, just the number of players and the number of ones that aren't afraid to really step up. And I think he brings just such incredible credibility that everybody else falls in line. But it was kind of fun the way he handed the baton off to Mateen. And you know, I told our players, when Irvin would come back, when Mateen played here, and I said, hey, Mo, Irvin's coming to practice. Don't screw it up, you know. And I swear, when's he coming? Tomorrow. I swear to God, Mateen Cleaves didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He did nothing. He idolized the ground he walked on. There's getting to be less idolization, too, because guys are exposed to more, and guys, you know, that's a sad part. And I told my team that. I said, you're getting spoken to maybe two of the greatest leaders that ever played in college sports. And I 200%. I know Magic because he's proven it now in basketball, out of basketball. He runs his life the same way. And in Mateen, I think you're going to see him make a jump out of basketball now that's as big as the one he made in. And wasn't the greatest player, weren't the two greatest athletes, but boy, I tell you what, greatest winners that I've ever been around, and I feel so fortunate to have those guys around when we need them.
I don't think you usually watch the video after you lose an NCAA tournament game. I think I asked you about the Memphis game, and you said I watched it. That was years ago. I don't know if you usually, why did you watch this one? Am I right that you don't usually watch?
I don't. I watched this one on the plane on the way home, because I just couldn't believe. I wanted to see, you know, was it their defense, was it them, or was it us? And I know it wasn't a lack of focus. Was it fatigue? Why was that ball going all over the place through a guy's hands? I mean, there were just so many bizarre things. And I also wanted to see if I thought the inside play was what Adrian was telling me. And those two things I wanted to do right away, because Hollis sat next to me and watched it, and he's on all those committees that has an impact on officiating and this and that. And so I did. I watched it then, and I watched it when I got home. So that is different for me. Maybe because I really believe this was the team that, could have won it all.
Would you be happy if they applied the perimeter rules to the inside? Or do you want to be able to play on the inside?
I love what Tony Bennett said. I mean, we jumped way too far one side, and I don't care who's mad at me or who finds me or who does anything. I mean, we jumped way too far. I couldn't believe some Applings even out there, not on the ball one, but the rule states, if we want to get to the letter of the law, that freedom of movement. That means if a guy's walking off to the bathroom and he's still on the court and somebody impedes his progress, that's causing a freedom of movement issue. Why is that inside or outside? What has that got to do with anything? But what happened is they were calling too many fouls. TV was, people were complaining. And just happens this one year we have better inside players. Normally, maybe that works to our advantage. With the weave, that would have worked to a Judd's advantage.
Denzel has some memorable turnovers, but when you actually look at the numbers, I mean, he's second in the Big Ten in assist to
Yeah.
turnover ratio. Is it because he's got a memorable passer, he always makes something happen, that we remember him, or is it not as much an issue?
Oh, no, he's done turned the ball over half as much as last year. Like this last game, him and Keith had, I think, 4 each, and, some of them were weird. But he's way better than he was last year. And that was one of the things Irvin said to him, keep it simple. You don't have to go behind your back. It was awesome. It's worth my salary. I should pay Irvin just to stand there and talk to him. But, and you know what? The meeting I had with Zell today, he sees things so different because I think you got to burn your hand before you realize it, maybe. But if everybody has to burn their hand before they realize it, we're not going to get where we want to get. And so I told him, we will be picking captains next week. I experimented with something. I did it for all the right reasons. I don't regret it in any way, shape, or form. But we'll have 2 captains by next week. And they will be sending my message, and Irvin's and Steve's and Mateen's and Travis's and anybody else who's who's been a captain here that had significant influence. I'm going to do some unique things with that I've already decided on, and we're going to get something done that way too.
Have you been contacted by any schools about your assistance?
There's been a couple of schools that have inquired about both of them. Not a lot of them right now. There's not a lot of jobs open right now. Well, there's more than 3. There's Marshall, there's South Florida, there's Houston, there's... I think Mike has resided to the south, that he's with me now, like it or not. He's going down with me. He's older than me. He's the Buck Nystrom of college basketball, So, and I think Mike's pretty cool with that. The hell, we started together in college. You might as well finish together.
You talked about the captains. Did you feel like this year you had to put more leadership on yourself?
Yeah, I had to do a lot more stuff on that, and I knew it doesn't work totally. I still thought our chemistry was pretty good, but anybody watch SportsCenter this morning? They had a thing on the Indianapolis Pacers and how their chemistry is going down, and it was really an interesting story about the Spurs. In fact, that'll be watched tonight by my team. I got my guys taping it right now, and it was really good. And you still, the one problem is I stick to my theory that a player-coach team is better than a coach-coach team. And a coach is never going to be in the locker room, not when it matters. Never. A coach is never going to be at the frat party or the movies or the out to dinner the same way with a team. It's never going to happen. And And I think that that's where the player-coach part of it comes in. We had a unique situation this year. I went with it. It didn't work out so bad. But it's not the right way to do it. And as I sat there and, you know, get a phone call from Steve Smith or from Day and then watch Mateen and Irvin, it even made me realize more that that is what's needed on great teams. And so I'm going to figure out a way that even if I don't have one, I got to do a better job building it, because they don't just come around like they used to. I got to do a better job building it. And so I've got some things in place and talked to those guys in the past already that what we could do to help build that. And I'm kind of excited about that.
Anything else?
Yeah, Tom, you know, Joe used to be real proud of his friends in the coaching profession, and he felt the same way. Do you step away and get anything out of it? You know, you go through Germany, cross paths with Amaker, again, stronger friendship, I would assume. Kevin Ollie, that's about Tony Bennett. Do you get something out of that?
I do. I appreciate the guys who do it and do it the right way, and all those guys you mentioned do. And you know, like I met Kevin Ollie with Jim Calhoun on the road, and God, I liked the guy immediately. That was 3 years ago. You know, he's just a good guy. I talked to my NBA guys that are out there, and they say Kevin Ollie's just a great guy. You know, and he reminds me of what's his name, who used to coach the Pistons, Mike. Son played here. Michael Curry. Jeez, brain dead. Michael Curry, you know, a great guy. I think a very knowledgeable coach, and a guy that Kevin Ollie, man, he got after him, and he did get after him now on that floor, and yet he has a rapport with him, and you know, Doc Rivers-ish, you know, and so, you know, that's been fun. Tommy Amaker has a different approach, but is a good friend, and is, you know, you hate to play against. I mean, Tommy's different than Kevin or Tony, because Tony and Kevin are guys I respect and know. Tommy was a guy that I went through some incredible things with back in the day, and you know, those are harder friends to play.
What do you like in the American League West?
Well, I was just gonna look at that closer today, and thought I'd let you know. I like the Tigers still. I like the Tigers. Final four. You know, I am pulling for Wisconsin. This will be really hard for everybody to believe, but I have, you know, watching Bo. I mean, first of all, you know, there's been the big rivalry, and you know, me mad because they dunked in the last second, and I still tell him I'm still mad about that. But as I got on the board with him and got to know him, and then, you know, have an appreciation for the fact he still does it the right way. And in the last 4 or 5 years, you know, the friendship's grown since we've been on the board. But watching him at the end of the game, I talked to him before the game, and the story about his dad's birthday, I knew his dad pretty well. His dad was just a jokester. He was an unbelievable guy. And the Final Four is where he did it all. And, you know, kind of watching Bo be un-Bo-like, you know, and instead of the jokester, he actually had a tear in his eye, and he actually spoke so differently. I was happy that he got there. I mean, it really, it's what's right about basketball. He deserved to get there at his age and his situation and what he does. But I think Florida might be the best team right now. I know Kentucky's coming on. I think UConn is still, those two guards are phenomenal. But in Florida, you got 4 seniors, I think, maybe 5, 4 seniors. You've got guys with experience. Billy's done it before. You've got uncharacteristic. Bo and Billy's teams are a little different than they've been. Bo's been so good defensively, and now they're almost more of an offensive team. Billy's been so good offensively, now they're actually more of a defensive team. and defense usually wins championships. And that's one thing I will say. If you look at our team in the last 3 weeks, and you look at how much better we became defensively and rebounding the ball, and that is what makes championships. The third aspect of that is, like I say every year about the Super Bowl, turnovers, and that's the one area. It's funny though. Some teams in our league that are first in one and last in the other. Wisconsin's very low on the defensive side. Michigan wasn't as high on the defensive field goal percentage side, but Wisconsin was very low, and yet they have one of their best offensive teams. So it shows you can skin a cat a lot of different ways, but consistently, I think Florida has the most going for it right now. They played UConn early. They had the one kid out with the ankle, the one kid who was suspended, and they lost by 1 at UConn. So although UConn's got that, what do I want to say? It's who was the guy before Shabazz? Kimba. They got the Kimba factor there, and that might play a role in this whole thing. Who knows?
How's Kentucky changed since you saw it?
Kentucky, I think the guards are a little better than when I saw them earlier, although I think Randolph is worse. I mean, he's good, but I mean, he was unbelievable that night. But, I think it's going to be tough for Wisconsin. I just don't know if they have enough bigs to handle. It's going to come down to how it's called in there, because Randall is going to get there, and it also depends if Cully Stein plays, because he's good enough and athletic enough and big enough to go out with Kaminsky on the perimeter and on the inside. They have some guys that can do that. I don't know if Wisconsin, the freshman Hayes has been really good, but he hasn't been as good, I think, in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if he's hitting the wall or if people are figuring out what he is, but other than that, they just don't have a lot of size in there. And boy, against Kentucky, you're going to need some size and people to bang and things like that. So that's what I think Kentucky's better, because their guard play has been better.